The Vanderbilt family was worth over $200 billion in today's value. The Astors owned almost all of Manhattan. The Gucci name was everywhere. Paris, Milan, London, New York, Beijing. And yet, within a few generations, they went broke. So how does a family with unlimited money run out of money? What's going on? Well, it's because these families did almost everything right, but they did one thing wrong. And that's the same mistake we see wealthy families make today. My name is Palmy Kitty, the other half of the Kitti Sisters. Over the past 7 years, my sister and I have scaled to nearly over $500 million in assets, returning over $45.2 million to our investors, and help families preserve over $93 million in taxes. And once you understand this one mistake, you'll realize why most wealth doesn't last. It breaks down. Let me show you how to make sure it doesn't happen to yours. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. If you start working tomorrow, not a vacation, not a sabbatical, I mean, you're done. You're out. How long does your lifestyle last? 6 months, 2 years, 5? Because here's what I found when I looked at the numbers of high earners in your exact position. Most of them couldn't last 18 months. These aren't lazy people. These aren't people who made bad investments. These are surgeons, founders, real estate developers, operators, people who by every conventional measure are successful, but they confuse high income with wealth. And those are not the same thing. Not even close. Here's the first principle of truth that the top 1% understands and almost everybody else doesn't. Wealth is not what you make. Wealth is your lifestyle continuing without you. Listen to it again. Wealth is your lifestyle continuing without you. Not your salary, not your 401k. Wealth is what happens when you completely disappear and your money keeps flowing in anyway. By that definition, and this is going to sting, most high earners aren't wealthy. They're just expensive. Before we go any further, I want to introduce you to a framework that changes everything, and it's called first principle. First principle isn't a buzzword. It's actually a methodology that Elon Musk uses to build rocket ships at a fraction of the cost of NASA. It's what the greatest investors, the greatest builders, the greatest legacy families in the world use when everyone else is following map that leads them off the cliff. You take every assumption you've ever made about money, about investing, about how wealth works, and you throw it all out. You strip it down to the foundation and you ask this one question: what must be true for this to actually work? Not what sounds good, not what your advisor told you, not what worked for your neighbor. What must be fundamentally, irreducibly true, regardless of trends, regardless of market conditions, regardless of what decade you live in. When we apply first principle thinking to wealth, truly strip it down, here's what we're left with: 3 blocks. 3 truths. 1 operating system. Block 1, what wealth actually is. Block 2, what is the right vehicle? Block 3, what is the right structure? And here's what's truly remarkable. All 3 runs on the same underlying truth. System beats effort. Structure outlasts talent. Ownership beats optimization. So let's break each one down. Here's the first principle truth about wealth that 99% of people, including very sophisticated, very successful people, never actually confront. Labor doesn't compound. Ownership does. Let that sit for a second. Your job, your active income, your consulting fees, your salary from your business, or the capital from your exit all has a ceiling. There's only 24 hours in a day. You can't work 26 hours. You cannot clone yourself. Your labor hits a wall and stays there. But ownership works at 3 a.m. Ownership grows on top of itself. Ownership compounds across years, across decades, across generations. Ownership doesn't care if you're sick. It doesn't care if you're in Bali. It doesn't care if you're gone. So here's the diagnostic I want you to run on yourself right now. What percent of your net worth is generating income that has absolutely nothing to do with your personal effort? If the number is less than 60%, here's the hard truth. You don't have wealth yet. You have a high income dependency with an expiration date, because high income without ownership is a sandcastle. It looks impressive. It really is. But when a tide comes in, and the tide, a health event, a market shift, a forced exit, doesn't negotiate. Now, I need to tell you something that most financial content creator will never say to you, because it's uncomfortable, and uncomfortable doesn't get clicks. But you do need to hear this. Most wealth is completely gone by the 3rd generation. Grandpa builds it, parents maintain it, grandchildren destroys it. And here's what makes this genuinely heartbreaking. We're not talking about some abstract historical statistic. We're talking about your lifetime. Your grandchildren are not some far off hypothetical. If you're in your 40s or 50 right now, there are a very real chance that you will be alive to watch it happen. Think about it. A lifetime of brutal, back-breaking work, years of risks, years of sacrifice, the deals that kept you up at night, relationships you strained, vacations you skipped, health you ignored, all of it evaporating by the time your grandkids get their hands on it. You won't just hear about it secondhand. You will be the first-hand witness to the demise of the fortune you spent your life building. That is not a statistic, that is a tragedy. And it happens right now with families who had every advantage you have. And the cruelest part is not because your grandkids are stupid. It's not because the market crashed. It's because nobody built a system to protect the wealth from the humans who inherited it. Nobody wrote down the rules. Nobody built the governance. Nobody separated who owns the money from who controls the decisions. And without the structure, complexity grows faster than the skills to manage it. And the whole thing unravels. This is entirely preventable, but only if you take action before you need to. Okay, so we established what wealth actually is. Ownership over labor, systems over effort, cash flow that doesn't require you. Now, the question every sophisticated investor actually asks, what do you actually own? We reverse engineer this. We started at the top. The family office is managing $500 million. The sovereign funds, the university endowments that have survived for over a century. We work backwards. We ask, what do institutions built to last forever consistently deploy capital into, decades after decade, through recessions, through pandemics, and interest rate cycles and political upheaval? The answer was consistent, unmistakable, and maybe surprising in how simple it is. Real assets, cash flowing real estate. Now, here's the first principle truth. Not a pitch, not the marketing, the actual irreducible truth. Real estate, at its first principle truth, is a machine that converts a basic human need, shelter, into a predictable cash flow. That's it. That's the whole thing. People have to live somewhere, and that's not a trend. That's not a fad. That's not something AI can disrupt. That's not going to go away with the next tech bubble or the next election cycle creates chaos. The demand for shelter is as close to permanent investment thesis as exists on this planet. But here's where most people get real estate completely wrong, and this mistake costs them everything. They buy real estate hoping it goes up. That's not investing. That's speculation with a tax advantage. Real wealth real estate is flawed for what it puts into your pocket every single month, months after months after months. You're in a boardroom, on the beach, in the hospital. Appreciation, that's just a bonus. Cash flow, that's the engine. And here's the second insight that separates the sophisticated from everyone else. Operations matter more than location. Once you confirm that people want to live there, that the demand is real and durable, the difference between the property that builds generational wealth and the one that quietly bleeds you dry is entirely about how well it runs. It's the system behind the asset. Real estate isn't just an asset, it's an operating business wearing assets clothes. And that's why operators who understand systems, and this is why it connects back to everything else we've talked about, wins consistently while passive buyers hope and pray. For a high earner coming out of a liquidity event, this mattered in a very specific way. You've already built one business. You don't need to build another one called landlord. What you need is institutional quality operations, professional asset management, and predictable cash flow without adding another job to your life. That's what well-structured real estate syndications deliver. And across over $400 million in acquisition, it remains the vehicle we trust, not because it's exciting, but because the first principle math is irrefutable. Let me make this concrete for a second. You take $1 million from your liquidity event, not all of it, just a meaningful slice, and you place it in a well-structured multifamily syndication. You're targeting 8% cash on cash return annually. That's $80,000 a year without a single action from you. But then it compounds. You redeploy those distributions into the next deal. The depreciation offsets your passive income. The asset is refinanced or sold, and you capture the appreciation as a bonus on top of everything the cash flow already delivered. Over 10 years, that $1 million isn't just 1 million anymore. And the compounding effect of deploying returns back into ownership, what we call infinite return system, means you're not growing a pile. You're building a machine that grows the entire machine. That's the difference between a financial advisor optimizing what you have and a generational wealth system multiplying what you own. Everything I've walked you through, the ownership mindset, the real estate vehicle, the compounding system, none of it matters without what I'm about to tell you. This is where legacies are won and lost, and almost nobody talks about it. Here's the first principle truth of generational wealth, the one that the wealthiest families in the world understand and almost everyone else ignores until it's too late. A family office exists to prevent wealth decay across generation, not to maximize returns, not to beat the market, to prevent decay, to build a wall between the wealth you created and the entropy that destroys it. And the core principle inside that truth is this: governance beats returns. I want you to really sit with that. It doesn't matter if you generate 20% returns if your family have no rule for how decisions get made. It doesn't matter how smart your CPA is if there's no process. It doesn't matter how good your legal structure looks on paper if the humans inside it have no framework for disagreement. Capital doesn't need a personality. Capital needs a process. I've watched families lose $30 million in 18 months, not because of a market crash, not because of a bad investment, but because two siblings couldn't agree on a decision. Nobody had written down the rules. Nobody had clear authority, and legal fees ate the asset alive while they fought in court for 2 years. That's not a wealth problem. That's a governance problem, and it's 100% preventable. And here's what a family office framework actually does. At first principle, it separates who owns the wealth from who controls the decision from who manages the day-to-day. Those are three complete different roles, and when you confuse them, when the wrong person suddenly have control over 3 generations of capital because nobody designed it otherwise, it ends up the same way every single time. It writes down the rules before the crisis: investment policy, risk tolerance, decision authority, distribution rules. What happens if a family member wants liquidity? What happens if someone gets divorced? What happens when you're no longer here to make the call? These are morbid questions. These are the exact questions that protect everything, because things always gets complicated. Complexity is not the exception in wealthy families. Complexity is the guarantee. And it builds risk management into the DNA of wealth structure, not as an afterthought, not as a checkbox, as a foundation that everything else builds on. A family office isn't a luxury for billionaires. That's a myth that Wall Street benefits from you believing, because it keeps you dependent on the advisors who optimize for a quarter, not for a century. A family office is an operating system for your legacy. And if you're serious about wealth you've built lasting longer than you do, if you're serious about not being the first-hand witness to its collapse, you need this framework now before you need it. I want to speak directly to you for a second. You have a major liquidity event, or one is coming. This is the most important financial moment of your life, not because of the number, but because of what you do next. Most people in your position make the same mistake. They hand it off to a financial advisor. They diversify into paper assets they truly don't understand, and they feel like they've done the responsible thing. And then slowly, quietly, over a decade, the purchasing power erodes, the structure drifts, the family dynamic gets complicated, and they wonder why it doesn't feel like enough. The top 1% do something completely different. They go back to first principles. They ask, what must be true for this wealth to actually last? And the answer always comes back to the same 3 things: ownership over labor, convert what you earn into assets that compound without you, real estate as a vehicle, the first principle machine, shelter into cash flow that has survived every economic cycle in human history, governance as a foundation, family office framework that protects the wealth from complexity, from conflict, from the entropy that destroys 70% of the family's fortune by the 3rd generation. Because here's the thing nobody says out loud: you didn't grind through all that, the sacrifice, the risk, the years you'll never get back, just to hand it off to the 3rd generation to watch it disappear. You built this to matter, to last, to mean something 100 years from now when your grandchildren are making decisions you'll never see, but that your choices today will have made possible. That is what wealth it actually is, and it's available to you right now with what you already have. Here's the one next step. It's a free assessment called Where Wealth Breaks. It takes a couple minutes. It'll show you exactly where your current structure has the most exposure and what to do about it. No pitch, no sales team, just the clarity that most people don't have until it's too late. Because the families that outlast the rest don't have better luck. They have a better system. Go build yours.